All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the Indian Constitution, one of the most fascinating legal documents in the world. We're going to unpack how it handles something incredibly personal to all of us, our faith and the fundamental rights that protect it.
So think about this for a second. For a country as incredibly diverse as India, with so many faiths living side by side, what does freedom of religion even mean? How do you put a promise like that into practice, on the ground, every single day? That's the big question we're going to tackle.
Well, the place we have to look for answers is right inside the Constitution itself. Specifically, a set of articles from 25 to 28 that lay out the entire blueprint. And this isn't just for citizens, by the way. This framework is for everyone, aiming to create a society where you can follow your beliefs without fear. Okay, so let's start at the very core, at the most personal level. You, the individual. Article 25 is really the cornerstone of all of this. It's the part that speaks directly to every single person about their right to believe.
Now, before we even get to outward actions, we have to talk about what's going on inside your own head. The Constitution protects this thing called freedom of conscience. Think of it as your absolute, private, inner right to believe or not to believe. It's your personal space to figure out your own spiritual life, and the state, well, it can't touch that.
So, from that inner freedom, the right kind of blossoms outwards into four key areas. First, you have that freedom of conscience we just talked about. Then, you have the right to profess your faith. That just means you can openly say, this is what I believe. You also have the right to practice it, through rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And finally, you have the right to propagate, which is all about sharing your beliefs with other people. All right, let's zoom in on that last one for a moment, the right to propagate. Why? Because honestly, it's probably one of the most talked about and nuanced parts of religious freedom in India. And this is where things get really, really interesting, because the Constitution draws a very clear line in the sand. You have the right to share your beliefs, absolutely. But, and this is critical, that does not mean you have the right to force someone to convert. And the logic is simple. Forcing someone violates their freedom of conscience, the very same right that Article 25 is designed to protect for everyone. It can't contradict itself. And, this isn't all just abstract theory. The Constitution gets really specific. For example, it explicitly says that for Sikhs, wearing and carrying a kirpan is considered a fundamental part of their religion. It also makes a legal clarification saying that for certain purposes, like laws about social reform, the term Hindus can also include Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists. This was mainly about making sure Hindu religious institutions were open to everyone. It shows how the law tries to account for real-world practices and social contexts. Okay, so we've covered the individual, but what happens when people of the same faith come together as a community? What about their rights as a group? Well, that's where Article 26 comes in. It takes the idea of religious freedom and expands it to cover entire communities. Under Article 26, religious groups get four key rights. They can create their own religious and charitable institutions, think schools or hospitals. They can manage their own religious affairs without outside interference. They can own property, and they can manage that property as long as they stick to the law of the land. This is so important because it allows religious communities to build a public life, not just a private one.
But, and this is probably one of the most important things to understand about the Indian Constitution, none of these rights are a free-for-all. They're not absolute. Whether we're talking about an individual's rights or a group's rights, they don't exist in a vacuum. There are limits.
This brings us to the great constitutional balancing act. The framers knew that for a society to function, individual freedoms have to be balanced against the needs of the whole community. So they built in some reasonable restrictions.
So what are these limits? Well, they're grounded in some pretty common sense ideas: public order, morality, and health. A simple example, a religious procession is a protected practice, for sure. But if it's blocking an ambulance, the state can step in. On top of that, religious freedom can't be used to trample on someone else's fundamental rights, like their right to equality. See? It's all a very delicate balance.
And that really leaves us with the big, ongoing question at the heart of it all, doesn't it? How do you strike that perfect balance between protecting someone's deeply held personal beliefs, allowing communities to flourish, and making sure society as a whole remains safe and fair for everybody? It's a massive challenge, and it's one the Indian Constitution tries to navigate every single day. Something to really think about.